Yeah.
There we go. It's
Here we
recording.
go. All righty. Thanks, guys. Okay, so again, welcome to Berks Bards. Tonight we have Katy Giebenhain with us, and my name's Patty Ross. I'm the host. I'm going to give you a little background on Katy. Katy is a poet advocating for access to essential medicines. She is the author of Sharp's Cabaret, which is under the Mercy University Press. She is the winner of the Adrian Bond Award for Poetry. Her creative writing master's in philosophy is from the University of South Wales. Her MA is from the University of Baltimore. Along with Marty Malone and Alan Bojaj, she co-hosts a First Friday poetry series from September to June at the Ragged Edge Coffee House in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Katy has been a regional judge for Poetry Out Loud, which is the youth poetry contest, I guess, and she is the former poetry and theology editor of Seminary Ridge Review, which is a really cool review. I had a chance to take a look at some of those, and I'm going to ask you some questions about that later.
Oh boy.
So, I know. So I think, Katy, you said you had a number of poems to share with us. So I'm going to let you take it from here. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty and Jennifer Hetrick, and also Liz Stanley and everyone at Berks Bards. You all do amazing things, and I really appreciate the chance to read in the series. I would like to start with an ode. This is a poem called In Praise of Tab Soda. At the end of 2020, December 31st, 2020, the Coca-Cola company pulled Tab from the market. And those of us of a certain age remember it as a very important part of our history. So this is called In Praise of Tab Soda. Not the first, but the most iconic. A revelation in pink aluminum and glass since 1963. It was your wide, sassy welcome. A revelation in pink aluminum and glass. Fizz without sugar. It was your wide, sassy welcome. Patient chemistry. Fizz without sugar. A miracle of inclusion from patient chemistry for diabetics and dieters and disco dancers. A miracle of inclusion. What are we without soda pop? For diabetics and dieters and disco dancers, Tab made things right. Who are we without soda pop? Americans shrug and wonder. Tab made things right. Goodbye, low-cal matriarch. Americans shrug and wonder. Since 1963, goodbye, low-cal matriarch. Not the first, but the most iconic. I think of Tab as being like the grandmother of Diet Coke. So.
Yeah, I know. I love that poem. That's such a cool poem. And for those of us that survived off of Tab for a while there, we appreciate the ode.
So the next poem I would like to read is called Sophocles and Local Pharmacists. This is a pre-COVID poem. It came out in a journal in Florida called Bridge 8, which is a really beautifully designed journal. So I was really happy to have it appear there. And it's about pharmacy benefit managers. So it might be the only poem out there that has an epigraph with the term pharmacy benefit managers. So, you know, fasten your seatbelts, everyone. The epigraph reads, third-party pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, contracted by health insurers in the United States, now act as powerful shareholder-serving gatekeepers. Sophocles and Local Pharmacists. No one loves the messenger who brings bad news. A couple of neighborhood pharmacists dip the rims of their glasses in salt and crushed aspirin in no particular hurry. They pour gin. They sit 3 blocks from the party in a minivan, listening to NPR jazz. They speak for the PBM chameleon, telling patients what's no longer covered for fewer days, for higher copays, covered only by mail order, anxiety personified, news born across Formica counters, in suburban chains, in one-horse towns, in city drugstores founded by their own great-grandfathers. Not what they signed up for. This is not what they studied, not who they are. No one loves hearing what they're about to lose, not in echoes of Antigone or the shift from jazz to blues. No one loves the messenger who brings bad news. A couple of local pharmacists sit in a minivan listening. So, and this next one is a winter poem. Cold enough to read a winter poem. This is called Pretending to be Italian. Ignore the snow, the radio singing basketball scores, this entire block of shutters that don't close and were never meant to. Fill your fists with the volcano of flour and egg on the worktop of your non-Italian kitchen. Think the espresso, the instant espresso in your Wisconsin is for lovers mug is fresh from the bar in the village square, proffered by the aunt of a paleo jockey. In the museum calendar, Saint Anne just gave birth to Mary. Leaning from the bed, Anne's gray-faced Venus of the moment ignites the planned air. In the hot precision of Lorenzetti's foreshadowing, she's pretending to be someone else too.
Very nice, nice. Thank you.
So this next poem is called The Sound of Sugar, and it is Beatitudes after Big Joe Williams, who is an incredible late blues guitarist, singer-songwriter, and type 2 diabetic from Mississippi. This came out in the Arkansas Review. The Sound of Sugar. From the Peabody Hotel to Catfish Row, the sound of sugar is a sound we know. Blessed are the capillaries, arteries, veins, like the delta seen from outer space, tributaries stretching in a crinkled glow. Blessed be the stage floor, the kitchen floor, the dirt floor. Blues in the fingers of the 9-string king. From conversation and the shanks of shoes, the sound of sugar echoes through. Blessed are the blamed. Blessed are the uninsured. Blessed are the stunned, the resigned. Blessed are statistics from the CDC. Blessed are the tired of worrying, for they shall inherit wholeness. They shall be carefree. We shall be carefree. Glucose and geography, luck and myth. The sound of sugar is the one I'm with. Blessed are the undiagnosed. Blessed are those in the know, inheriting the spice of solidarity. Blessed are the newbies and the veterans, string bending alone. Blues in the room of every show. The sound of sugar is a sound we know. And I thought, since I read a poem about the deep Mississippi down at the Delta, I want to balance that out by reading one called Itasca, which is the headwaters of the Mississippi up in Minnesota. Itasca. Splinging cold and ready, before it gathers speed, tugging at the zipper, this is the river on training wheels. Before it gathers speed, this makes the rest possible. This is the river on training wheels. Just watch. This makes the rest possible. Oh, prodigal in the making, just watch. The diving board flexes, the foal stands. Oh, prodigal in the making, Minnesota minted. The diving board flexes, the foal stands. A novice can surprise you. Minnesota minted, tugging at the zipper. A novice can surprise you, especially one splinging cold and ready. Thank you. Okay, so I've got to get one Lutheran poem in here. This is called A Lutheran in Vegas. And I think the only thing you need to know is there's a reference to the Boneyard, which is, it's like an outdoor museum of neon signs that have been taken down, you know, from renovations. It's this, yeah, outdoor museum is the best way to describe it. So, A Lutheran in Vegas. In the Atomic Energy Museum, a mannequin family smilingly awaits their civil defense test. Behind glass, a vintage comic book presses itself open for him to read, Superboy, I'm sorry we asked you to swallow those 2 new chemicals. Why is there more pleasure in lighting tea lights with Benny Binion matches than watching the sexton at the Easter candle? Warum? Why does the valley's fishnet of lights slow his pulse? And why does Karen Carpenter's voice pour in silkier dimensions from a patio speaker rock than from any of his best altos? Benny died on Christmas Day. This won't escape him. In his future of poinsettia-flanked altars, its reinvention personified, right here, before and after the horseshoe. Now there's a man he would like to have met. At his first 21 table, he asks the dealer about her bracelets, WWJD. They don't wear these in Germany. What would Jesus do, she says. I like to think about that, flipping her cards back in a maternal matter-of-factness that holds him mesmerized. At Hoover Dam, he imagines John the Baptist climbing out of a camper, whistling like a rancher, thoughts without alcohol, or even what doesn't happen in Vegas stays in Vegas. At the Boneyard, his last night, he smokes. He keeps company with Aladdin's lamp. It's an open-air dog pound. Each icon waits, preening in faded paint, to leave the neon sign graveyard, to be taken and made magnificent again. In this climate, bulb sockets don't rust. Their empty metal puckers go on, wanting, waiting, wanting. Okay, so we're in the West. I'm going to do one Germany poem. You know, we can't be in movie theaters right now. I think that's changing pretty soon. But in Germany, there always used to be, as part of the advertisements before a film started, there was inevitably cigarette and ice cream advertisements, always. So, and there were these very spectacular Marlboro Man ads. So that was just, when you thought of going to the theater to see a movie, that was just part of the experience. So yeah, so this is called Marlboro Country Remembered. And the epigraph is movie theater advertisement, Frankfurt am Main, Germany. At the movies, we sit clutching open beers and sweet popcorn, stunned by the mountain profiles. Out there, it's all campfires and rope tricks. Space like that can make you dizzy when your own horizon stops at the concrete torso of the building next door. Like the steely shove of a barn door, my West rolls back to the rodeo mama next door, homemade jeans, sunglasses raked into her black roots, a glass of wine in one hand, a whip in the other. My West comes back with a thwut of spit by the stop tank, and dogs trained to worry steers' heels on signal. Then my head was packed with big ideas, thoughts wide as Paul Bunyan's arm span. Now they're pigeonholed to fit and rusty as the language I once spoke. But here I am, smoldering. Here I am, lit. Okay, I have to do one Gettysburg poem. So here's my one Gettysburg poem. This is called Bear on the Battlefield. Sweet spot of the day, the last tour bus propels itself through the fresh dusk. Split rail fences rim the road in waggy stitches. In local news, a bear's been spotted. A young black bear in Gettysburg National Military Park. This part of spring, they're separating from their mothers for the new breeding season. It's logic, nature, etc. On the asphalt, New Balance rubber, lift, land, lifts. I finally get a rhythm. Cows on my left, passing meadows, the road, the first monuments. Here we go. It's not logic at all. My life could stop with the backhand of a teenage bear, killed on an after-work run. How absurd. And yet, everything about him is ordinary, instinctual. This is the first non-absurd part of my day. Outside, not on my ass in front of a computer, not wearing heels and eating apples and Cheetos over the keyboard. I run the ground where thousands of men and horses fell, through smoke and cannon crack so loud it echoed to Washington. Absurd. Each death, full-scale war among neighbors. The road swivels into the trees. I lift, land, lift. If it came down to it, to what machines and the minds of men can do, wouldn't I prefer the bear? Wouldn't you? Okay, here's, this is the 2-poem warning. I don't know, is Billy Collins the one who started that thing about 2 more poems? I have 2 more poems. This one is called Even the Kisses Have Changed. And in a way, it's kind of a Pennsylvania poem too, because these 2 artworks are in, can be seen in Philadelphia. And there's a lot of works of art with a title, The Kiss. These happen to be sculptures. And there's an epigraph to this poem as well. And here is the epigraph. The 34 major pharmaceutical corporations that belong to pharma together spent more than $120 million lobbying Congress in 2019. That's in 1 year, lobbying Congress. Even the kisses have changed. In the museum today, policy creeps into everything. The Brancusi kiss is the magical crinkle of limestone hair, locked arms, unity. Rodin's Francesca and Paolo convene in cool shadows, lighter than marble has a right to be. Sculptures made in other times and countries shift before my eyes. Art in the days of Big Pharma is the permanent hug of lobbyist to lawmaker. Like this, no air between them, no light, just the heavy intimacy of money, the universal seal of trust and permission, an ancient contract with American proportions and flair. Real bodies are beholden to what the market will bear. Okay, so my last poem is a Vietnam poem. But more than anything, it's about soldiers in any war who kind of are quiet and just go about their work, and they're not the focus of any movie that you'll see. They're the people in the background who help other people to kind of get through. So even though it's about one war, it's, you know, I'm thinking about the figure in other wars too. So the poem has two parts. It's called 1969. And the first part is called Soldier with Typewriter. At a certain speed, keystrokes land like hooves on blue clay, chopping firewood with more than one axe swinging. Howie the barber's shears in action. At a certain speed, they sound like helicopter blades. The air is thick with them. And the kid, the newbie's pegged for infantry, the tall one with glasses and small hands for being such a goddamn good basketball player, could type. And a certain speed was needed just then. Surprising himself, he had ammunition in his knuckles, in the quarter turning of his neck, back and forth above the pert Litera 32. At his desk, the jungle whispered, chided through plywood to his sunburned ears. A certain speed kept her quiet. And part two is called Pitching Horseshoes in Saigon. Through skies, he didn't even need a passport to enter. He brought shoes. Decided beforehand, this tour would be a glass half full. Yanked stakes from familiar ground, rammed them into place, much deeper in sand, much. Free time was never so expensive. Right arm posed, home held. In each crouch unwinding, he kept it up, taught others the follow-through arcs until many ears strained for that chink of a ringer. Here was symmetry, the long arm of the farm, distance controlled, straw bales or duffel bags, broken fences or charts for his commander. Games changed, but work was work, and free time was never so expensive. Marking each block of day, he went on as he'd begun, the weight and shape of luck in his hands. Thank you.
Katie, thank you. Those are lovely.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to give Katie a second, right, to catch your breath and get to, I did post a list in the chat. So if you were inquiring about reading tonight, it's in the chat, and I'll go in the order of the list. And I think just a heads up, Marissa, you are first.
Okay.
So so Katie, I have a couple of questions to ask you. And again, guys, if you have any questions for Katie, please put them in the chat to me so that I can ask those questions too. So one thing that you wrote that I just loved, and for some reason, I don't know. So tomorrow's my birthday, everybody. Woo!
Ah!
Yeah. So I think that's the whole nostalgia thing. So I was like going back over the years. You know how like I think on like Facebook, which I rarely go on, but anyway, but no, I do. But on Facebook, you know how they show you like, you know, whatever happened so many years ago. So something said to me, it said like go back 5 years and just see what was going on with Katie 5 years ago. So that was, of course, brought me to I know. Katie's like, where's she going with this? Brought me to the Seminary Ridge Review. So don't worry, hon. It's everything. It's all the stuff that's in writing. It's not even there's no pictures. It's all in writing. So okay, yeah. So anyway, I was looking through because I was just so one thing that I do is I tend to be very spiritual too. And so the whole idea of you and your marriage between poetry and theology, and you know, obviously philosophy, but when you were doing that editing for that section, I was just like, wow, you know, I'd like to see what was in there. And something that you said that I thought was really cool was you said, you wrote, we do not need to wear other people's metaphors. Try them on, but keep searching if you need to, and find the one that fits. It matters. And you go on to say something else, but it says it matters. The work is worth it because what you're saying is worth it. We need to be good scouts, tenacious and alert, hunting for metaphors that fit. When you find the right one, it will do great work for you. And having known you before, I was like, that sounds like a sage. Like, wow, like what in the world? I did. So with that being the case, I noticed that a lot of your metaphors are sort of ordinary things, right? Like, you know, you can pick out the ordinary. So I kind of was wondering, how did you get to that point where, you know, you could, you know, actually take the ordinary and create that and to this wonderful, you know, kind of create the poem around that, um, sort of using that as your metaphor, like.
Well, I think as a reader and as a listener to poems and sermons and other types of writing, it gives me pleasure to hear surprising, ordinary but surprising things. So I think that's part of where it comes from, that I enjoy hearing about something that is, you know, sort of an everyday thing or experience, but having someone just look at it in a little bit of a different way, because on the one hand you can relate to it. It's not something that's so like, oh, I have no idea what that is, and yet it's not ordinary if someone just, you know, looks at it in kind of a different way or connects it with something else. So I guess that probably comes from being like an observer or a listener and appreciating when I've heard, you know, other writers do that. So
it's kind of what flashed across my mind was just thinking about the jogging and the bear, right? Knowing that the bear was out there and then deciding that, you know, I got to do this run, right? It's like, you know, this is what I do every day, so I have to do that. I think in that same I'm not sure if it was that issue, another issue, you know, you talked about the drooping Santa, you know, and then you wrote a poem about that. I just thought that was just so like a deflated Santa. I'm sorry, I couldn't get anything from it. And you wrote the nicest poem on that. And I was like, wow, you know. So and then the other thing that I noticed, and again, like I said, that, you know, your section was obviously poetry and theology, but you're also, you know, your degree in philosophy. And I think that it's really interesting, the correlation between poets and preachers. and the kind of the rhythm that sort of both learn, that can't. So can you talk a little bit about what you found in, all the work that you were doing around poetry and theology with that?
Yeah, I have spent a lot of time around like preachers and chaplains, and I think, a good sermon is, it's tough to write, and I think the form of the sermon and the form of the poem have a lot in common, because in both cases you really have to get to it, like the reader or the listener doesn't sort of give as much time as with perhaps a novel, or even a short story, or article, or certain, I mean, with some articles maybe that's a little different, but I so often would be listening to a poetry reading or listening to a sermon and be thinking about the other genre at the time. And I thought, there's so much that applies to these two forms. It's so similar. And the rhythm is part of it, but also this coming away with some just tiny bit of something a little bit unexpected. Because the other thing is, if you're someone who's listening over and over to sermons, it's like you might be talking about passages of scripture that are very familiar, or things. So it's like, but you always have to come to it slightly different, because even if you've heard about like a topic or a scripture, and it's like, okay, this is like the 30th time around for me, how, depending on however old you are. Well, at that time though, the world is not the same that it was the last time you heard that, right? And the person speaking and the people listening are at a different part in their lives. Different things are happening, and there's something, and so that's the case, I think, with sacred texts, but with other things too, that we're changing and evolving, and society around us is too. And if you stop and you think, well, my faith is what it was back when I was in third grade, like that's problematic, and that gets us into some political trouble, I think, because people want to just at a certain point stop and say, okay, I know how the world is, I know how people are, right? So I think that's part of it, the exploration.
Yeah, you could kind of see that too in your Beatitudes poem that you read for us tonight, the blessed, in that. So one of the questions here from the chat is, what inspires you to write? I think folks are interested in, sort of getting into the craft of, what inspires you to write. What's your favorite part or your least part of writing? So if you can chat about that.
I think I really like it when there's like two things that appear together that you like see or hear or experience, and that's usually kind of the spark, the idea, and I really like that. Revision can be tricky because there's just, yeah, it's time consuming, and some poems
we were talking about that earlier, right?
Yeah, some need a long time in the oven, right? And sometimes you might even have things that are good, but they don't belong together. It's like if you have a plate of food, right? You might have great ingredients, but they don't necessarily fit on the same plate. And so it can be hard, because when you put on your like editing glasses, that's very different than like that sort of initial idea. And also sometimes, and this is something where I think there is kind of maybe a bit of spirituality connection too. Sometimes what you write about, what you want to write about, isn't what you thought you wanted to write about. Like, you might like have a few lines, or have something that you observed, and you're like, ooh, I want to follow that, and I think this is going to be a poem about such and such. And then you write, and then and then there's kind of a shift, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this is about something a little bit different. So and now I'm forgetting, oh gosh, who said no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader? I'm embarrassed that I forgot the if anyone knows. Anyway, one of those writer quotes, and I think that's true. And I think I think that as the recipient of sermons, I think about that a lot too. I'm like, you
Yeah.
know, if you want us to experience something new, then, you know, the person putting this together, there had to have been some kind of little surprise for you too, for that to come across.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So one last question, and then we'll take you off the hot seat. So you'll be good. And this was specific to your 1969 poem. Just how did you decide that the two central metaphors would be a typewriter and a horseshoe?
Well, in this case, this is loosely based on a particular person and a story that I heard, in one case directly and in one case indirectly, about that person from the Midwest. And so part of it is, you know, the horseshoe playing is, at least in the past, was something that happened a lot there. And the highest percentage of drafted soldiers in the US, I believe, came from the Midwest. You know, later it was found out, oh, that it wasn't quite so even after all. So so some of that was just this kind of archetype of someone who, you know, literally hadn't really been outside of their context and was sort of, you know, sent off to war, as happens over and over. And the typewriter, yeah, sometimes it does, like in this case, come directly from hearing an image. Like that's something that I had heard about years ago and it stuck with me. And I just thought, oh, okay, I'm remembering now. So I was complaining to my mom in high school because I hated typing class, and I was just kind of like, meh, meh, meh. Of course, that was way before, you know, I'm not that young, so that's way before the idea of a computer, at least for most people, was around. So I didn't know that I would someday. Anyway, I was complaining about it, and my mom said to me, and she said, "You never know when something like this can save your life." And she said, "This is probably why your father came back from Vietnam, and if he hadn't, you probably wouldn't have been born." So that's where the
Nice.
typewriter came from.
Okay, okay. Well,
But it's not always directly biographical. Other things are more, you know, just sort of observed or thought through. But that is a particular example of a family story.
Yeah, it's interesting too with when you're writing about, you know, when you read a lot of war poems or military poems and things like that, you know, people always write about, you know, the soldier on the battlefield, the soldier with the gun, the soldier, you know, and you forget of the everyday soldier who is, you know, doing, you know, the barber in the barber shop, you know, I mean, sometimes a lot of people will think about the cooks, but the folks who are doing the everyday base, who are still soldiers, right? Who are still soldiers, who are still, you know, could be called up to actually do that job at any moment. So it's kind of interesting to take that and say, okay, let's look behind, you know, unravel and look behind. So, well, thank you so much for sharing. You know, I love you because, you know, you helped me push that send button on one of my poems there. And I was sharing with everybody that I had written this praise poem, and I sent it around to a group of friends, and I said, you know, hey guys, give me some feedback. I'm, you know, thinking about, and nobody sent me anything back. And then Katy said, send it. And I hit send, and lo and behold, it was accepted in one of the reviews. So I know, so I was so tickled. I was like, yay, Katy's, good luck. So, all righty. Well, we are going to ease ourselves into the open mic portion now. Thank you so much, Katy. And our first open mic is Marissa Michelle. Hi, Marissa. How are you? Can everybody please make sure they're muted before we get started?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. Katy, I loved hearing your pieces. They were awesome. Your word choice is great. And like your use of repetition also really struck me because I thought it was just beautiful to hear. So thank you. Could I actually not be recorded for the open mic portion?
Very nice, Marissa. Thank you so much. We just so enjoy your poems from such, it's amazing what you're able to bring forward out of such a young spirit. So a young being, but I think you have an aged spirit. I tell you, I love your poems. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know we had the list, and Pat okay, Pat K.
I'm here.
Here you go. Hi, Pat. Here you are. I
Hello.
see you.
Okay, this is called Saint Blais. Since I was a small child in an old church built by an endless line of immigrants, there was the feast of Saint Blais, when throats were blessed with sacred candles to prevent the bones of fish, forced upon us during Lent, from choking anyone. To me, it was a day in February that was longer than the days in January or December, a day that I remember as often sunny, though cold, a day that foretold the coming of spring, then summer, when the offending fish would be drawn from a lazy, warm river while the family picnicked along the bank. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Vanessa?
Hi,
Hi.
I hope that you can hear me. My internet.
Oh, Vanessa. Okay, hold. You're coming back to us. There you go.
Okay. All right. I'll give it a try.
Mhm.
This poem is The Remedy, and I'll leave it to you to decide what is the remedy for. Go to the woods, wander among the trees, watch the snow melt, soaking the earth. Step in the new mud and feel the dampness seep into your shoes. Observe the tracks of squirrel, rabbit, fox, come and gone with purposes of their own. Stay in the woods until a crow lifting from a branch shakes snow down your neck and you laugh out loud. Say hello to your neighbor when you return.
Nice. We like those kinds of poems. Very nice. All righty. And Michael Hoover? Michael still? There you go.
Unfolding, unfolding. The waterfall in my heart is just the rush of your voice, sonorous, soothing cacophony, smoothing liquid over rock, fluid and solid concurrently, like hope woven around faith, like revelation rising from the past, fractals of truth, turbulent beauty, peace in motion. Thank you.
Whoa. Soothing, what was it? Sounding, soothing cacophony. Oh my gosh. Love it. I can't hear you. You got to unmute yourself, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sonorous, soothing cacophony. Yeah.
Wow, that was beautiful, beautiful line. Sorry, guys, I got a delivery in the middle of that. Wow. Well, thank you so much for that line, Michael. I was rushing to write that down. That was beautiful. And I think we're wrapping up with James. I know I saw James jump on. Do you have to jump back off? James P? James Poem? Are you? Nope. All righty. Well, So I think that we have heard from just about everyone. I think I'm going to put Elizabeth on the spot. Liz, would you share one of your poems with us?
Certainly.
If not, I can round us out, but
Okay, thank you. So this is, let's see, what is the, I'll show it to you on the screen. It has a line of text on the left.
140 days, both cannot do any.
Who's that? Not sure. Okay.
it's okay. I muted them.
Okay. So this is an unusual piece, let's say. How it went Wednesday, November 3rd, 1982, when Grace died. Good morning. I was scrambling eggs and pouring juice. Where are my shoes? Here's your lunchbox. I sorted clothes and did a load of laundry. Come here, Bree, let's wash your hands and face. I was teaching English to Hmong women. I'll see you tomorrow. Turn that TV down. I'm trying to talk to Val. I was cooking chicken and peeling carrots. I was picking up the Lego blocks and Raggedy Ann. I was bathing Bree. I was reading Winnie the Pooh to Erica. Good night, Mommy. Good night. Good morning. She was awake. I was scrambling eggs and pouring juice. She was breathing. Where are my shoes? She was breathing. Here's your lunchbox. She was breathing. I sorted clothes and did a load of laundry. Someone fed her gruel from a plastic syringe. Come here, Bree, let's wash your hands and face. She swallowed, water trickling from the corners of her mouth. I was teaching English to Hmong women. She was looking at the ceiling and thinking and not thinking. I'll see you tomorrow. How are you doing, Grace? I'm going to change your nightgown now. Turn that TV down. I'm trying to talk to Val. Her body grew warmer. She was breathing. I was cooking chicken and peeling carrots. She was breathing, harder now, louder now. I was picking up the Lego blocks and Raggedy Ann. She stopped breathing. I was bathing Bree. I was reading Winnie the Pooh to Erica. Her dry lips parted. Her body grew colder. Good night, Mommy. The skin stretched taut across her high cheekbones. Good night. My grandmother's face turned darkly blue, the woman said. The woman was with her when she died. Grace. She was awake. She was breathing. She was breathing. She was breathing. Someone fed her gruel from a plastic syringe. She swallowed, water trickling from the corners of her mouth. She was looking at the ceiling and thinking and not thinking. How are you doing, Grace? I'm going to change your nightgown now. Her body grew warmer. She was breathing. She was breathing, harder now, louder now. She stopped breathing. Her dry lips parted. Her body grew colder. The skin stretched taut across her high cheekbones. My grandmother's face turned darkly blue, the woman said. The woman was with her when she died. Grace.
Oh, Liz, thank you so much. And I tell you, we lost a friend of ours last night. And so that poem now has just a special meaning for me as well. So thank you so much. Her name was Alice, and she was a wonderful painter and printmaker here in the Maryland DMV area. So thank you all so much. That rounds out our evening. And so again, thank you. Will be next month, I think, James. Alexander Black Picasso is joining us, I believe. Is that right, Liz?
Jesse Alexander.
Jesse Alexander.
Mhm.
Yeah, he'll be joining us, which I don't know if you all have seen Jesse or heard Jesse, but he's a fabulous, fabulous poet. He's part of the Voices of Woodlawn, which if you have not had a chance to see the Voices of Woodlawn and hear that presentation, search the internet and find out where they're going to be next, because it is well worth seeing that. I mean, honestly, they should start selling tickets. It's
Yeah.
such a good performance. And the last that I was with them, I understand that they are going to be working with the organization over in Woodlawn to do some more writing and exploration within the history of that plantation. So just really good things to come. So keep an eye out. Well, thank you all so much. We're going to bid you adieu. And if you can't make it to Gettysburg tomorrow night, you can certainly come down to Maryland to the open mic we're going to have down in Maryland. But otherwise, then we'll just see everybody here next Thursday. And again, feel free to email me early if you'd like to be on the reading list for next month. All righty.
First Thursday in April.
First Thursday in
Yay.
April. I believe it is April the 4th. I think it is April the 4th. Yep. So thank you all. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Patty. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Patty.
Bye-bye.